Hello chess friends and welcome to Zarov's chess channel and welcome to the TCEC Season 18 Super Final between the two top engines Leela C Zero. So we are now in the game 26 in which the Caro-Kann has been played, and Stockfish had some problems in the previous seasons playing this static openings, this positional openings. Now this improved version of Stockfish is playing really great positionally, I think, and that's why Stockfish has this comfortable 4-point lead in front of Leela C Zero. So it's great how this developers have improved this Stockfish version. I'm really excited to see what will happen now in this TCEC Season 18. We have really some great tactical battles, but also great positional battles, and now Stockfish is really brutal. Doesn't matter what we are playing, neither of which is of course a tactical opening, if we are playing Caro-Kann, which is a static opening. Stockfish brutalizes it all. So let's check out now this positional game played by Stockfish. I think it's a very instructive chess game for those who have trouble maybe to play against the Caro-Kann. This is, I think, a perfect game. In the game e4 played by Stockfish, we have c6, the Caro-Kann, after knight to c3, d5, knight to f3, the two knights variation of the Caro-Kann, which is, I think, one of the best ways to proceed against the Caro-Kann, not with this common idea to play the move d4, because this two knight variation comes with the idea, of course, to play with your knights in an early stage of the game. We don't want to play with too many pawns, so we want to play on this fast developing style. If you play something like here d4, it's not a problem. I think we can solve this problem immediately with the move knight to e2. Okay, you could maybe try something like d3, but now after c takes d3, maybe here queen takes d3, but now again knight to c3, and I think white has really a comfortable game. The queen has to retreat. Let's go back maybe to d8, but now you see after d4, white has occupied the center. We are restricting always this four centralized squares. We have two knights out on this most natural squares, and we could try maybe something like bishop to c4. Really, this would be a great position for white already. So that's why after knight to f3, we have knight to f6, e5, kicking away the knight. We have knight to e4, and now knight to e2. What we want to do is play on our space advantage, because we have now created this advanced pawn on e5, so we want to support this pawn with d4, but also if the position allows, also maybe to play the move c3. So that's why this knight to e2 idea is a maneuver of the knight. We want to play knight to g3, then c3 d4, bishop to d3, challenging this outpost of the knight on e4. So in the game queen to b6, we have now this idea, d4, e6. You see Leela C Zero is preparing the c5 move more. We have now knight to g3, and now c5. Here Stockfish comes with a great idea, I think. Stockfish plays the very nice move bishop to d3. The problem now for black is you would love to play maybe something like queen to b4, but then you get simply c3 and you kick away the queen, and we can simply take out the knight on e4. So that's why Leela C Zero took for first the knight on g3. After f takes g3, we have c takes d4. Okay, you get a pawn, but let's really stop a little bit and evaluate the position. First of all, white has a great activity of the bishop pair, and these double pawns, let's evaluate them. They're really like this one pawn. So this pawn on e5 still restricts always this ability of black's pieces to play, and I really like this activity of the bishops. It's really a great attacking formation. Now we can of course castle and attack the f7 weakness. So so far, great opening theory here by Stockfish. This double pawn structure is of course also a weakness, so in long terms we shouldn't chase this pawn on d4 immediately, but in long terms we can maybe attack it, get it back, get our pawn back, and then go into favorable middle game, because this bishop will be really so annoying for black that it's really a problematic position already, I think, because if we validate this bishop strength, okay, this bishop is the only, I think, minor piece on the board that has a sort of activity, but it aims basically into nothing. It's not attacking anything, and this bishop is blocked out by its own pawn. The knight on c6 can be developed, but again, it doesn't have a great activity. So here castling play by Stockfish, we have knight to c6, a3, preventing some knight to b4 ideas, and now we have bishop to e7. b4, attacking immediately here the queen side, because there is also one strategical problem for black. Black cannot castle here on the king side. That's the problem, because this bishop's activity is not allowing you to castle king side. So that's why this b4 move is really a sneaky move by Stockfish. If black castles then on the queen side, then we have a fast attack. We want to, of course, play b5, a4, a5. We want to split the pawns in front of black's king. So castling on the king side is really not an option here. Here in the game, a6 was played because there was this threat to play the move b5. But let's see now this possible continuation if you play king side castling. I think then first this move b5 is a great possibility here for white. After knight to f5, we have knight to g5. Preparing here queen to h5. You see how these pieces are all aiming on the king side. And with this move e5, whenever you play and deflect maybe this knight from the defense, you see black has really these problems. Black has the lack of defenders in front of the king. The only pieces that are defending the king are pawns. So you would be forced, I think, to take out this knight after bishop to g5, h6. But now queen to h5 is a great attacking possibility here. You could try maybe queen to c7 in order to somehow cover this 7th rank, because you would love to play something like f5 and then covering somehow the h7. But I think now bishop takes h6 wins the game immediately. After g takes h6, it's not about taking this pawn, because there could be some troubles with the move f5 to lock the light squares and then also covering the h7 squares. Now queen to g4 is winning immediately. After king to h8, now rook to f6, it's game over here for black. So great attack that Stockfish has prepared here already. So that's why you see a6 was played, not castling. Castling is a disaster here for black. In the game, queen to e2, we want again to try this idea, knight to g5, but now our e5 pawn was hanging, so we would still love to play this move, knight to g5, and attacking here this f7 weakness. Black would be forced then to cover this f7 with the rook, so we could then maybe try bishop takes h7. So you see, that's why here h6 had to be played in order to really restrict its knight's ability to play. We have g4. Now Stockfish is trying to improve his double pawn here. In the game, bishop to d7, g5, and queenside castling. And still, okay, black has secured the king, but still it's a risky position, because we have already, as I said, this advanced pawns, a3, b4. Now we want to crack the position with the move b5, play something like rook to b1, include this bishop in the attack. So again, now we would simply change the direction of the attack. Again, you see how great this bishop's activity was, aiming on both sides, and also this bishop on d3, not that it only aims on both sides, it stops. It has created sort of a blockade against this weak pawn on d4. So in the game, g takes h6 was played, g takes h6, and now rook to b1, preparing finally now our idea, maybe bishop to d2, then a4, b5. In the game, knight to a7, and now bishop to b2. So from a strategical point of view, the only thing that black can do here in order maybe eventually to win this game is to go into for positional trades of pieces. So it means black could maybe try the move bishop to b5, because then you would get rid of this bad bishop, giving you would trade it off for a good bishop here on d3. But so far, it's not possible, because, as I said, the d4 pawn is a problematic thing. So here, after the move bishop to b2, Leela C Zero is forced to play the move knight to c6. If you play bishop to b5 immediately, we can simply take bishop takes d4. After bishop takes d3, queen c takes d3, and you see you lose the piece. Even if you try something like queen to c7, still we could maybe first take the knight on a7, and then try something like rook to c1, and it would be game over. So, but from as a strategical plan, black should really try the move bishop to b5, really to get rid of this really bad bishop on d7. It's really blocked out by this pawn structure on light squares. This bishop is okay, it has at least some kind of an activity, but so far this positional trade of pieces is not possible, because Stockfish played really a nice attack, and it's not allowing here Leela C Zero to breathe. So king to h1, very nice idea, very nice defensive strategy here by Stockfish, getting out of the g file, because there is, of course, some tension on the g-file. Black will try counterattack on the g-file, so king to h1, perfect move. And now rook to g8, c3. So if you try something like queen to f2, I asked myself this question, why isn't Stockfish attacking the d4 pawn immediately? Then I think it's a simplification line, because black can play the move queen to c7, also counterattacking this pawn on e5. We could play knight to d4 maybe, but now knight to e5 would be a possibility. If you take here with the bishop, Then again, knight takes d4. You are forced now to take with the queen because you cannot take with the knight. Again, you're losing your e5 pawn, but still, this is now, I think, a good position for the bishops. We could try something like rook to f8, f6, and then get these two centralized pawns rolling somehow. So I think in this particular position, the bishop would find a way into the game. This Darsko bishop could be really a dangerous one, so that's why this queen to f2 idea wouldn't be such a great attacking possibility here for white. So that's why here c3 was played. Very, very nice move. If you take here, d takes c3, bishop takes c3. The problem is now that the c file will get opened. You see, again, we are having this very nice attack. Also, this bishop is aiming. Still, we are having this possibility to have to play the move b5, splitting pawns in front of the king. So black really has to be careful. So that's why here in this position, Leela C Zero tried the move king to b8, getting out of the c file because the c file will be opened in a particular moment of the game. Here finally c takes d4, and now knight to a7. Now Leela C Zero is trying this positional trades of pieces with the move bishop to b5. We have knight to d2, and now rook to g7. Knight to b3, we have rook to g8, and now rook to f2. You have to protect, of course, your g2 pawn. We have bishop to b5, and now knight to c5. Okay, this bishop to b5 idea is coming a little bit too late, I think, now, because it is, as I said, a strategical idea. But if you take here bishop takes b5 immediately, let's see now this possible continuation. We have queen takes d3 after something like queen takes queen to b5. We can simply simplify the position. After knight takes b5, here rook to f1 is a possibility. This is now our main target, the weak pawn. Okay, you could maybe go and give up this bishop for a good knight. But after b takes c5, there is one problem now in this position. You see, this is not an advanced pawn. If this pawn would be on a5, this knight would be perfectly fine. But after something like a rook to f8, we could simply play this very nice move a4. Kicking away the knight, knight to c7, and now bishop to c1, I think wins the game here for white. There's no good way how to defend everything. You cannot really make something happen here. I think we can play after that something like rook to f6 if rook to h7 is played. So this is really a bad position here for black. We have now also this very nice and healthy pawn structure in the center. Really a bad position here. So as I said, this idea of bishop to b5 comes simply too late in the game. It's not a good defensive option anymore in the game here. Knight to c5, as I said, was played. We have queen to d8, and now finally bishop takes b5, and you see a takes b5 had to be played. Again, if you try knight takes b5, then you get this very, very tricky move a4. Again, kicking with the knight, and now b5 will really open the whole queen side here. The king will be endangered, and I think in this position black is lost. So as I said, after bishop to b5, we have a takes b5, so not knight takes b5, but now queen to f1. We have b6 attacking the knight, knight to d3, bishop to h4. If you try queen to e8 in order maybe to defend here this pawn, then bishop to c1, again, this tricky idea to get an attack against this h6 pawn. But I don't think that white should even take this pawn on f7. If you do that, then you're basically inviting your opponent to come into the game with the move rook takes g2. So here bishop to h4 was played. We have rook to c2, queen to g5, and now bishop to c1. Very nice attacking here on the queen. We have queen to g6, and now bishop to e3. The idea is now to get the bishop on g1 and keep really a compact position in front of the king. We have queen to e4, and now bishop to g1. So let's stop a little bit again. Let's evaluate what the position, what happened here. I think that white has regrouped perfectly here. White has played some great defensive moves now. You see, all of these pieces are really glued together. The queen is protecting the knight, the queen is protecting the bishop, the rook is protecting here the pawn, the knight is perfectly fine. We could play something like knight to f4. The bishop is protecting the d4. So black's attack is a little bit splashed. The knight is far away from the action. If this knight would have been maybe somewhere on f5 or in h5, this could be maybe a great attack. But as I said, this knight is too far away. White has defended. White has now really the opportunity to play counterplay. And the main idea, the main attacking idea, is to finally push the pawn here on a4. Rook to g5. We have rook to b2. Queen to f5, and you don't want to trade off queens when you're better, of course, in the chess game. Now queen to d1. Here Leela C Zero is searching for simplifications, is chasing the queen a little bit all over the board, but not another problem. Queen to f1. We have queen to f5, queen to b1, rook to g7, and now rook to a2. This is now finally the preparation to open the a file, and there's nothing to do for black. You cannot prevent this idea. The a file will be opened. The rooks are also far away now from the defense of the king. We have h5, queen to d1, bishop to d8, and now rook to f2, attacking the queen. Queen to g4, again trying this desperately idea to trade off the queens, but again rook to f3. Now everything is perfectly fine. Queen to e4, and now a4 immediately here played by Stockfish. Now you see our main goal is to play a takes b5, and then followed with queen to a4, getting a rook and queen battery on the a file. This could be really game over. So in the game, h4 was played by Leela C Zero, with the idea, of course, to play the move h3. If you try this move b takes a4, then you get queen takes a4, and the problem is now there is this tactical threat that Leela C Zero has prepared here. The main tactical threat, this will happen a couple of times now in the continuation of the game, is this threat to play the move queen to f3. You cannot take g takes f3 because you get checkmated here with the move rook takes g1. But this move queen takes f3 would be simply too late, because we are having, of course, this move queen takes a7. After king to c8, we have rook to c2, and it's game over. You can only cover with the bishop, but now queen takes c7, and it's game over. But I wanted to point to this tactical possibility for black also out, because it is really a possibility. If white makes something wrong here, then this queen sacrifice is possible with the move queen to f3. But in the game after the move a4, that's why you see queen takes f3 wasn't played in the game. We have now h4, and now knight to f4. Very important move to stop this pawn to roll. Now we're protecting our h3 square. In the game, rook to g4 was played, and now a takes b5. Here comes the problem. If you take rook takes f4, if you take the knight, then you get queen to a4, again with this checkmate threat. If you try knight to b5, then you get a very, very tricky move, rook to c3. The idea behind this move is, of course, first of all, to cut off this c file for the king, so the king cannot escape through the c file. And the problem is now the knight is attacked. You cannot do anything. If you take this rook with the move knight to c3, then you get queen to a8. You have only one square here, the square c7, but now rook to a7, and it's game over, because you see this rook to c3 idea deflected the king from the defense of this a7 square. So great attack here after the move a takes b5. That's why knight takes b5 was played. Here queen to f1. Now this idea to play the move queen to a4 doesn't work, because now queen takes f3 is working. That's why I showed you this queen takes f3 idea in the first place, because now if you play some checks, this is the problem. After king to c7, we have now maybe rook to c2, but now I think that black can simply escape here. King to e7, you could maybe try some checks, but again, we could simply escape. Queen to c6, again, we're escaping here. The problem is now that you cannot create any more checks on dark squares. You see, this knight is protecting everything, and if you take, for instance, here this knight on b5, then again we have maybe some h3 possibilities. We can also take this knight with the queen. Still, this is now perfect queen and rook battery on the g file, so I think black is better here. But that's why queen to f1 was played. So you see, you cannot rush into the attack, so queen to a4 would be a mistake. In the game, knight to c7 was played, and now b5 locking now the position here on the queen side. We have king to b7, knight to h3, protecting everything, bishop to e7, and now comes this very tricky idea, rook to c3. The only good defensive piece is of course the knight here in front of the king. Here bishop to d8 was played, and now comes the stunner, rook takes c7. That had to hurt, I think, because here after bishop takes c7, now the queen comes very active into the game. The c6 is not protected in the game. Queen takes g2 was played. Again, if you try something like rook takes g2, that's not an option because you get simply checkmated with queen to c6. You can only move the king wherever you go. If you go to c8 or b8, the same thing will happen. Let's go. Let's see, king to b8, but now rook to a8. It's again checkmate. So in this position, Leela C Zero decided to sacrifice the queen because this move comes at least with a check. But after rook takes g2, we have again this idea, queen to c6. Now king to b8 was played, and now queen to d7. We are attacking, of course, now this weak f7 square here in the game. Rook to g7 was played, and now bishop to e3. Now the problem is for black that this knight on h3 is covering this square on g1, and of course the bishop is also covering the square, so we can play at least now freely with one of these minor pieces. In the game, king to b7, we have queen to c6, king to b8, and now knight to f4. Now at least we can include another piece in the attack. h3, we have knight to h5, rook to g2, knight to f6. Here comes rook to c8, but now very nice move, knight to d7. We have king to a7, but now knight takes b6, and this was game over here for black. Here Leela C Zero tried a desperate try, rook takes h2, king takes h2. Here bishop takes e5, we have d takes e5, but now after rook takes c6, we have b takes c6, and the problem is now you cannot take. This is a pass pawn. Even if black manages to get this pawn somehow, still we can continue this game with an extra pawn here. These pawns will be taken in a couple of moves, and still it's a bad position for black, although you have still 4 pawns on the board, but it's game over. But let's see the continuation. King to b8 was played, king takes h3. We have king to c7, king to h4, and here after king to b8. In this position, Leela C Zero resigned. So great game, I think, in the Caro-Kann. I really like this two knights attack in the center. A really nice positional game. Then Stockfish really striked with this open A file, played some great tactics, and now after this game Stockfish had a comfortable 5-point lead, but then afterwards Leela C Zero managed to finally win the game, so the result is now +4 for Stockfish. So this will be probably Stockfish season, but still more games are to play, so still at least like 65 games will be played, so maybe Leela C Zero can turn things around, but with such a Stockfish I simply don't believe such scenario. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I enjoyed it a lot. If you want to see more games like this, check out my commented chess games played by computers. Here's the link. And if you want to see the best chess games played by humans, you can also check out my best chess games of all time series. And if you like this content, you can also subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.